Welcome to From Our Generation, where we uncover the ideas and events that shape the world we live in today. I'm Crom Carmichael.
And I'm Mike Hassel.
Together we'll explore the past to better understand the present, because history isn't just about what happened, it's about how you think about it. Well, Rush, it is May 29th, and you are sitting in for our good friend Mike Hassel. And we're going to start the podcast because we actually were having a bit of a conversation and then said, let's put this on the podcast. And while it doesn't have anything to do directly with what we're doing, it does have to do with a general theme that you and I were discussing in depth before the podcast. And that is back in the 1980s, Ronald Reagan became elected in 1980. And when he was running for office, one of the things that he said he was going to do was he was going to eliminate the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. And it's important to know that the Environmental Protection Agency came into being under Jimmy Carter, the president right before Reagan. So it was a new agency, and Reagan thought it was going to become a bureaucracy that would grow and grow and grow and be bad for the country. So he ran on. He said he was going to eliminate the EPA, and he gets elected. And it wasn't long after he got elected that there were news reports of radon gases and how dangerous radon gases were. Now, radon caused cancer, so they claimed. The proponents of radon claimed that radon causes cancer and that radon emanates inside people's houses. And so, this became very, very scary. And so all of a sudden now, if you were going to sell your home, you had to provide a radon certificate of some kind or another. I don't remember the exact, but it got to be this huge deal where people were scared to death. And so what I did was I said that this sounds to me a bit like a hoax designed to keep the EPA in business. Because let me tell you the properties of radon. It was odorless, it was tasteless, and it was colorless.
Magical.
You didn't know it was there, okay? But there were radon detection machines that could tell you whether or not it was there.
It's like Scientology.
Yeah, so I believe the radon detection machines were essentially created to register that radon was there, regardless of whether the radon something. So at any rate, so I called the EPA, and I said, I'm doing a report, and I'm very interested in this subject of radon. What is it that radon does that is bad? Oh, radon causes cancer. I said, really? I said, where does radon come from? And they said it comes from limestone, among other places, but especially from limestone. Well, Nashville, Tennessee happens to be sitting on limestone. Yeah. And so I went and checked and found out that the cancer rates in Nashville are no different than the cancer rates in the rest of the country. So to me, I debunked the theory of the so-called theory of radon. All right. And so then I checked a bunch of other cities that have a lot of limestone. And then I had a little fun. I called the mayor's office and asked for the public relations people. And I said, I'm writing an article on your city, among other cities that have a lot of limestone, and the EPA says that radon comes from limestone, and so I'm going to be writing an article on all the people who are dying of cancer in your city, and I just want to get your comments. Well, they go apoplectic and say, wait a minute, we don't have a lot of people dying. I said, well, you must because the EPA says that you have a lot of limestone, and therefore you have a lot of radon. And I said, but I can wait a couple of days so that you can get some data, and I'll call you back. I'll give you time to refute what I'm claiming to be true. And I called them back, and they were absolutely thrilled to report that the cancer rates in their city were no different than they were normal. And so what I'm saying is the reason I bring up this radon thing is because it became a big deal. And by the way, the EPA got bigger and bigger and bigger. Because Reagan could not shut it down because the EPA made them the self-appointed people to detect radon and to save the public from this dastardly gas that was odorless, tasteless, and colorless.
That's so interesting.
I say, and that's what happened. And there's still, radon is still kind of with us today, although it's kind of died away in terms of importance because the EPA doesn't feel threatened right now. They may be getting shrunk, but they're not. Their existence, there's not an existential threat.
100%.
So this actually takes us to another subject of today, and that is UFOs.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, so UFOs are now all of a sudden in the news. What do you think of the news about UFOs? To what extent do you think that they exist, if any, and in what form?
I think that the moment the government starts talking about UFOs, I stop believing in UFOs. That's generally the rule. So I believed there was a lot more going on before the government started talking about it, and then after seeing a lot of the releases that they have put out of so-called evidence they have of UFOs, they're fairly easy to debunk. So I don't know exactly what the game is, whether or not this is meant to be a distraction of some sort, whether or not they're just trying to waste Tim Burchett's time. Or whatever.
Tim Burchett seems to
he seems to be enjoying it.
He seems to be bought in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He seems to be enjoying it. So
now here's my question, because I see the news just like you do, and I see these little videos of these little unidentified flying objects, which is what a UFO by definition is. But then the next thing is the next question is we don't know what they are. That's why they're called unidentified flying objects. And we know that there are little videos of them diving into the ocean and things like this. We don't have any videos of them landing on the planet and then people exiting or something exiting from the vehicles.
That is true.
We don't have any of that evidence yet, other than Men in Black. Of course, we
have certain documentaries.
We have certain documentary evidence. Exactly. Thank goodness for that.
Yes, exactly.
But so my question is, where do you think it goes from here? First of all, do you believe that there are UFOs with beings inside the UFOs that are surveilling our planet?
Well, there's a lot of things in that. I think that there's a good chance that there could be beings. I think it's important, like you said, that there's no video of all the video evidence. We only have videos of so-called craft moving really fast at crazy rates of speed and going in different directions, stopping on a dime, all this stuff that we can't do, which suggests significantly better technology, or that some of these, artifacts or whatever they are either glitches or holograms, which a hologram can move as fast as you want because it's just light, right? So there's a lot of different question marks there. But what I think is the most likely, based on all the different pieces that they've shown, is that one, we don't have nearly as much of a handle on it as we are kind of being presented to by the government, that like we're hands-on and we got some of the craft and we've got this. I think that we don't know much about it, or else I think that technology would probably be progressing faster. In the U.S., I think we'd have some more advanced capabilities when it comes to aerial propulsion.
Let me see if I can drill down here just a second. Do you believe that there are flying objects that have been videoed that came from other planets?
Not other planets.
Okay, so you think that the flying objects that are identified as UFOs are something that is man-made?
Not necessarily man-made. I think that it's probably something, but it's interdimensional, so it's not having to.
Now, for Tallarico, if Tallarico thinks it could be any of 6 genders.
That's true. Yeah. There's a bunch of races. Exactly, yeah. Races with who knows how many genders.
Didn't want to get off
race.
the track here. So you think these are made by? Well, I'm trying to get at if they're not made by by beings on other planets.
I think
you just think they're anomalies.
The one that I think is the most likely, from my standpoint, and after all the different things, is that they are either time travelers that are from here, but from a very different time than we are. They could be from the future. They could be from, who knows, if they have all of this. If as they say, they've got a video that all the people, including Tim Burchett, is saying is real, and he has seen and he vouches for.
So you think Tim Burchett might be a time traveler?
Who knows? Who knows? But he vouched for 100
Tim Burchett
foot.
would love that.
He would really love that. But he vouched for a video they have, a very crisp 4K, as he described it, video of a 300-foot object moving at 100 miles per hour, something crazy underwater, right? So
Okay.
if that is true, let's just assume that that is true. That
Yeah.
one thing is true. He's advocating for it. I think that or not advocating, but vouching for it. Even if it's not true, I think he's sincerely wrong. I don't think that he would be, he doesn't come across the kind of guy who'd be coming out and saying this if he hadn't viewed this and doesn't think it looks credible.
Okay.
Right? So if that is true, then whatever the ship is displacing gravity, because you can't go underwater and gravity and all these different things not be a problem. You can't go at 100. I mean, the fastest ship we have in the U.S.
Well, it's not gravity. It's
inertia.
It's the water. I mean, it's whatever.
But if you
I get what you're saying.
But if you displace gravity, that's the whole idea. Is that if you displace gravity, then that takes care of every other substance as well. You could go right through a mountain, as an example. It would cause problems.
Now I'm curious
because it doesn't have any draft.
Okay, but why do you think it's not possible to build something that has enough propulsion to go 100 miles an hour underwater?
I don't think that's not impossible. I think what's impossible is for the water to not be affected by it. Because what I found the most interesting about Tim Burchett's testimony on this when he was talking about it was the fact that this object is going at like 100, who knows how much. Either way, the fastest we've ever done is 25 miles per hour.
Okay.
This thing is going way, way, way faster than that, and the water is not being displaced.
Oh, okay.
That was the most interesting thing. That's why I'm talking about the gravity piece.
Okay,
That would be something is very, very advanced. If they have something that advanced, then whatever it is, and let's just assume it's real for the sake of argument, whatever it is so advanced that we can't rule out time travel. I mean, if that's crazy. Who knows what that would mean? And honestly, and also a lot of these physicists and different folk, they've quote unquote confirmed, according to them, the existence of time travel.
Do you believe that the information that is coming out will or should? So I'm giving you two different ways to go here. Will or should have an impact on the midterm elections?
I don't think it will, and I don't think it should.
Okay. All right. So for our purposes,
I feel like no one cares.
For our purposes, and I think they're interested.
Yeah, exactly.
I think they kind of look at it. Now, I will say this. Some of the news programs that I look at, they seem to just can't get enough of UFOs, which is why I like recording them so that I can then fast forward through them, because they're not telling me anything that they didn't tell me last time.
That's exactly right.
So,
they've recycled a lot of content around that.
All right.
But I think that it's either time travelers or it's just another interdimensional thing, because it would show up in existence. I don't think it needs to travel all this way from another planet.
But at this point, you do not see it as an existential threat.
No, I feel like they could have done something to us by now.
It could have, if
and
they
maybe they
want
are.
to.
Maybe half the politicians are lizard people and all the other things that people say on the internet.
Okay. All right.
But I do not endorse that.
All right. Okay. So we're going to move on, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of the elections that happened last week and kind of what you think they mean in a bigger sense. And that is that, and I'll kind of share with you kind of what I think the meaning of them, and that is that you had the election in Texas. You had two. One is Tallarico won the Democrat primary. Of course, he won the Democrat primary a month or so ago, and the Republican primary had to have a runoff to the primary, so that one wasn't finalized until this past Tuesday. Then, as we know, a week before that, Senator Cassidy, the incumbent in Louisiana, came in third in their primary and just got absolutely pummeled. And in this primary, the incumbent John Cornyn got pummeled by the challenger in the primary. And then the Democrats picked Tallarico, who seems to me to be the farthest left candidate that's ever been picked in the state of Texas.
Yeah,
and maybe even the farthest left candidate from a weirdness standpoint of ever picked. And I'm not saying that Tallarico, and I want to be clear here about the weirdness part. I'm not saying that Tallarico has ever worn a Nazi tattoo.
Yeah. Exactly,
okay.
Yeah.
But the Senate candidate for the Democrats in Maine the one that looks like it's going to win their primary there, has worn a Nazi tattoo for 20 years. And so so that would be another, let's assume for purposes of this discussion that Graham Plattner does win, and let's say he is the Democrat nominee. Let's also assume for purposes of this discussion that the Democrat nominee in Michigan is the person who is the hardcore Islamist. Let's assume that he wins. What is interesting to me about that is that after the 24 election, there was much wringing of hands of whatnot on the media, both on media like Fox and on CNN and MS Now, about how the Democrat Party needs to change in order to be competitive in the midterms and then competitive in 2028. And my sense of the way that they meant change was to try to broaden their appeal to more people. My sense of it is that the hardcore left activists in the party are the ones who are now in charge of the party because of the people that they are nominating.
Yeah, it's not changing.
Is actually they're farther left than they were before. So how do you think that's going to play out in these midterms?
I think a lot of it hinges on Iran and how people are,
and gas prices.
Exactly.
Isn't that interesting? That's interesting. I saw where Newt Gingrich was being interviewed, and he made the comment. He said that if gas prices are below $3 a gallon at the beginning of September, that Republicans will do quite well. And if gas prices are above $4 a gallon on September 1st, Democrats will do quite well. Which is really, that's really a fascinating thing. And let's
just to boil it down to that,
for the future of our country to be boiled down to the price of a gallon of gasoline is I don't know, because I do believe that is basically true.
Yes.
The Democrats are running almost exclusively now on the price of gasoline. They call it affordability, but then when they're asked about, well, what's unaffordable? Gasoline. So I think that Gingrich has a really good point. And if the price of gasoline is seen to be falling, it's $3 and obviously therefore falling by September 1st, what do you think this means for these particular four? Well, in the case of Louisiana, there's not going to be the Democrat candidate is unlikely to challenge effectively in Louisiana. But in Texas, the Democrats seem to be very excited about their candidate. In Michigan, they seem to be very excited, and they seem to be very excited about Graham Plattner in Maine. And those are the seats they need to win. And then they need to find, well, if they win those, Michigan is already a Democrat seat. So if they win those four, they only pick up three, which would make it a 50-50. They would need to pick up another, which they will likely pick up a seat in North Carolina. It looks like the former governor of North Carolina, who is pretty popular, Democrat, is likely to win. At this point, he looks like he will win that seat. I just find it fascinating that Tallarico, I do not think Tallarico will do well in Texas.
No, I wouldn't think so.
I think that Paxton is, and it's also. But what's also interesting, I want to discuss is that Cassidy was an establishment Republican. Cornyn was an establishment Republican. Neither of them were particularly against Trump on policy. Cassidy voted to have Trump convicted after January 6th, and I think that was a vote that Cassidy made that didn't change anything. And he may say, "Well, I'm still glad I did it." But if he was asked, and he was completely honest about it, if you could change that vote and still be in the Senate,
yeah, I think he would have.
Would you change the vote? And I think if he was being completely honest, he would say yes.
Yeah.
But since it doesn't do him any good, because you can't do it, might as well fall on your sword and be a martyr. But Tallarico's case, the ads are already coming out where it says this is Texas, and then this is not Texas, and it goes back and forth, and it shows some of these very, very weird statements that Tallarico has made. So it's showing Tallarico himself saying that his campaign is now a vegan campaign. He is running a meatless campaign. Now, his only argument there is, well, that was my 22 campaign. That's a pretty weak argument.
Well, at the very least, it just shows that he's a windsock.
Yeah, and that's not very Texas either.
Exactly, yeah. It's not very don't mess with Texas. Which, do you know where that came from? Don't mess with Texas?
No.
It was a anti-littering campaign in Texas.
That's good.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Everyone thinks it's this macho cowboy thing, but it literally was just there was bumper stickers from back in the day.
Okay.
But it was a don't mess with Texas.
we had a deal back before your time here in Tennessee called Tennessee Trash. And we wanted to pick up our interstates and trash, and we didn't want people to not litter. And we had this guy who looked like a homeless fella in a absolutely beat up car, convertible, with just trash. He'd go down the interstate with just trash blowing out of his car. He was Tennessee Trash, and let's get rid of the trash. And it actually.
I wonder how close those campaigns were in time.
They probably this one is 25 years ago, so. It could be. You can look that up. And while you're doing that, though, there's a few other articles that I've read recently that I don't know if they necessarily apply to the election, but I kind of wanted to just bounce off of you and get your thoughts on it. One is this is they're from, I think this is the Wall Street Journal. It is Wall Street Journal, and the headline is Americans are falling behind on their $1.25 trillion of credit card bills. So, and they had some charts in the article. And what the charts are showing, and this is really, really this is something for our listeners to kind of be aware of, and that is that it's showing that the credit card chart is the 90-day delinquency on credit cards is approaching the same level of delinquency that we had in 2010. And that's not a good. 2010 was a rough time. It's also showing that student loan debt. Now, student loan debt has now taken, in terms of 90-day delinquency, has exploded because under Biden, student loan debt was the repayment of student loan debt was paused, and you can't just you either have to vote to forgive it, which means everybody who paid their student loan debts shouldn't have. So it gets into this question of moral hazard if you just forgive debt, and then the question is, well, if the people who went to college and got their loans forgiven, why can't I go to college for free? So you get into that. So the answer is the people who have student loan debt need to start repaying it. But the delinquency rate for past 90 days has now shot up above 10%, and it was at 12% in 2010. And then the auto loans, delinquent auto loans, is now above 5%. And it's actually slightly higher than it was in 2010. I take that back. I'm looking at the wrong. No, that is correct. And then mortgage rates, the delinquency on mortgages. This is the one area. Delinquency on mortgages is still very, very low. On compared to 2010, and so it may be that the delinquencies on mortgages. That tremendous spike in 3 years, that was the biggest problem that caused what was called the Great Recession.
Yes.
And so, but we'll keep an eye on these things, and we'll kind of report about this. But my guess is that consumer spending over the next 12 to 18 months is not going to be robust. I'm not going to say it's going to be terrible, but it's not going to be robust because there's a lot of credit cards, there's a lot of debt out there, consumer debt. So I think the spending will be down. Now, that would be from a macro standpoint, that's the bad news. The good news is that what I believe will be replacing that in terms of our economic numbers is that the big, beautiful bill that passed about a year ago, it included language in there that gave tremendous incentives to build and equip factories in the United States in the next 36 months.
Mm-hmm.
And that means do both of those things in the next 36 months. So in order to do that, once that bill passed, you have to A, find the land, you have to B, get the permit, you have to C, build a factory, and you have to D, you have to put the equipment in the factory. And you have to do all four of those things. I think where we are in that, I still think that there is land being found, but I think a lot of land has been found. I think there's still permitting to be done, but a lot has been permitted. And I think there are a lot of factories that still will be built in the next 18 months, but there are many, there's now a number that are being built as we speak. And I believe that the capital goods spending for the equipment that will go in those factories, I believe that those capital goods are on order, but they haven't been delivered yet. Mm-hmm. And that they will start being delivered toward the end of 26, will be delivered throughout 27 and throughout 28. And the reason I picked those years is that those are the years that the tax benefit is substantial. Mm. At the end of 28, in the absence of it being renewed, those tax benefits on capital goods stops. Mm-hmm. So those factories will then be the most modern factories in the world because they'll have the most modern capital goods in there, and a lot of it will be robotics. Mm-hmm. And so the robotics industry in the United States is surging tremendously, along with AI, which kind of, I guess, robots and AI go hand in hand.
Yeah, the software component.
Yeah, and so I just kind of, as we look at the 2026 elections, I think you and I agree that the price of gasoline is going to be a key element. Mm-hmm. And that if the price and I think Newt Gingrich is correct that the date that the price of gasoline needs to be down in that $3 range, I think is September 1. Mm-hmm. If it's not, then if it's October 1, then that's better than it not getting there, but it's not as good as September 1 because gasoline prices are affecting the consumer. Mm-hmm. And they're also affecting inflation, and not just at the gasoline price, but at the diesel price. Delivering things takes energy. Higher energy costs for fossil fuels means our utility bills are higher, and so all of those things are affecting the consumer in a negative way. And but I believe that inflation, as we are viewing it today, there were multiple things a year ago that were affecting inflation in a negative way. I believe now we have a single thing affecting inflation in a negative way. And so if the price of oil goes back down under $70 and gets down that $60 range, I think the gasoline prices will fall back well below $3. Mm-hmm. But more interesting, I think that means that the inflation rate will get down below 2, mm-hmm. Especially on an incremental basis, on a monthly basis. Annualized, it still will take a while to filter through. Mm-hmm. So I think that's going to be really interesting. The other thing that's happening is that blue states, the ones where the Democrats control the legislature and the governors, they all seem to be raising taxes and continuing to increase their spending mm-hmm. within their states. And so
Washington.
So yeah, Washington State, Hawaii just passed mm-hmm. an increase. They passed an increase. They call it their millionaire's tax, where they're increasing the top marginal tax rate on people making over $500,000. So
how do they get to?
It doesn't matter if you're making $500,000. You're now, as far as the Hawaiians are concerned, you're a millionaire. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so now they've raised it from they've raised it from not after taxes exactly. It won't be. Yeah. They've raised it from 11 to 13%. And so at the federal tax, the highest federal tax rate I think is around 37 or 38%. Mm-hmm. So if you're living in Hawaii, your combined tax on just your income mm-hmm. is over 50%. And that's, in California, mm-hmm. New York has raised all kinds of taxes. There's a story in here that I have here on what the Democrats are doing in New York. And as Kathy Hochul gets past, the headline is It's called her Get Past the November Budget. But what she's done is the Empire State. This is fascinating to me. The Empire State's budget is $268 billion. That's just the state. Okay, that is more than twice the budget of the state of Florida. Florida has 3.5 million more people.
I was about to ask that. Yeah, how many?
It has 3.5 million more people. And so the amount being spent by the state of New York per person is like 120% more than in the state of Florida, and they just can't seem to restrain themselves, and part of this says that this article is that they are, what they're doing is that the unions and this, we talk about this a lot. The unions in New York are getting all kinds of benefits in this legislation. The teachers hired in when they had to have 2012 pension reform, and when they did that, they said that they raised the retirement age for teachers. Well, now they've lowered it back to what it was. And they've lowered it back at a time where it really didn't. Well, I guess it may have affected some teachers, but now you can retire at full pay, at full pension at age 58.
Wow.
So that means that if the average person lives to be 80, then that means that people retire at 58 because the pensions are very generous, and then they can go work as a teacher, for example, in another state. Yeah. And still get their full pension from the state of New York. And these pension sweeteners are going to cost the government of New York and the taxpayers $557 million a year, and that doesn't count all the things that Mamdani wants to do. And so if you're living in New York City, Mamdani's going to get you even more than Hochul. Yep. But if you're living in New York State, and more of their tax revenue comes from capital gains. And so the next time that the stock market has a serious correction, which we know from history that stock markets will always have serious corrections, bear markets is what they're called. When they have that, these budgets for these blue states that rely so heavily on capital gains taxes will just be slaughtered. And the politicians that do this, they know it, but they're not doing anything about it.
100%.
And that just is concerning to me.
Well, how long do you think it's going to take for the Mamdani, effects to actually be visible?
That's a good question, because he says he's going to start very quickly taking property away from landlords who do these, and he's claiming if they do this or this, he's going to take away their property. Well, first of all, we have the Constitution says that government cannot take property without just compensation.
Yes.
And so if Mamdani tries to contrive reasons to take away apartments that are owned by landlords, and let's say that the apartments, just for math, are worth $500,000 and have $200,000 of debt on them, then the landlord has an equity value of $300,000. If Mamdani tries to just simply take those away because the landlords don't do what Mamdani claims they must do in order to retain ownership, I don't believe that he can take it without paying them. I don't believe he will be able to get away with that. And if he can't do it without getting away with it, then it means he can't do what he wants to do without spending a lot of money. He doesn't have the money to spend. Yeah. He's already Albany is now going to allow Mamdani to he's going to impose a tax on property that's over $1 million. It started as being over $5 million. If you own a property that's over $5 million and you don't live in it, if you're from out of town, then you're going to pay not only the property tax that you have to pay, you're going to pay an extra tax because you're an out-of-towner.
How much is the extra tax?
I don't know. I don't know what the percentage is, but it is not a small percentage.
Yeah, it's meaningful.
And it is meaningful in addition to the property tax, which is already quite high.
Mm-hmm.
And it applies to single-family homes of over $1 million, and it applies to apartments or duplexes or whatever they want to call it of $1 million. Mm-hmm. Well, there's a lot of property in New York that is valued at $1 million. Yeah. That people who from out of town may own, mm-hmm. And so it'll be interesting to see how those owners react. There may be ways to figure out ways to work around it. That take in Vancouver passed a tax like this, and in a relatively short period of time, 60% of the property that they thought they were going to be able to tax changed hands to somebody who was in the city of Vancouver. Mm-hmm. And so I'm guessing is that you find somebody in the city who owns the deed. They have some kind of financial arrangement, and the person from out of town still gets to come in and stay there. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So I think there'll be a lot of gamesmanship, because that's the nature when you try to apply a tax on a specific thing. Yep. People react to that in different ways. But one of the things, Rush, that you wanted to talk about in particular, and I thought it's interesting, especially given the Iran war and whatnot, is that you wanted to. I think you were. It's the end of our podcast last time, or right after it was over. You made the comment that you thought it would be good if we re-implemented the draft, mm-hmm. and so I wanted to have that conversation because I don't agree with that, mm-hmm. but I think it's an interesting conversation, and you come at it from the perspective of having served in the military in combat, and so I am interested in kind of why do you think that we should bring back the draft, and how do you think it should be applied?
100%. And speaking of as you brought up the combat arms component, because I do think it's worth differentiating the people who are on, in frontline MOSs or jobs in the military that put them directly in, danger as a part of what they do. Whether it's, you could be on an artillery group as an example and still be in a really hot spot, or be a rifleman and be in hotter spots than someone who's an EOD, or vice versa.
An EOD,
explosive ordnance disposal.
Okay.
So it's like there's so many jobs in the military, and I did a very, very, very small part of it. But I was in a combat arms MOS.
Okay.
And so
MOS,
which is pretty much whatever your job is. So your MOS could be you're a rifleman.
What does MOS stand for?
Military occupational specialty.
Okay. All right.
So it's just whatever your job is. Just they love the acronyms in the military.
All right.
But maybe less than me saying that I want there to be the draft reinstated again. I would love to be able to see two alternate histories where we start the draft up again. Where do we end up in 10 years with that versus where would we end up without that? And I can't do that. But if I we can't run that to a perfect degree. But I do think that certain pieces of, for example, how the Vietnam War was able to kind of come to a conclusion. There's a lot of evidence at play to say, hey, look, when you draft, people who are not otherwise wanting to go fight a war that they don't really care about, that the public outrage will be enough to kind of, push what we're doing politically. And when you look at, the past handful of wars we've been in since Vietnam, whether they're small or not, the people who are fighting for the United States are always the same people. It's 1% of the population fights for everyone else who was never going to serve and never would serve. And every time there's a war, those people's, sons and grandsons go and fight that war. Most people you chat with who were in the military, specifically combat arms MOSs, their dad or their grandfather served, their uncles served, everyone's kind of connected. So it ends up being the same cluster of people fighting the wars on behalf of everyone. And then you've got politicians who would never have their kids join the military, who would never want that to happen, and all of these different things. My main point, though, goes back to the Vietnam thing, where let's just say we instituted a draft. right now, and all of a sudden, let's say they started drafting people for the Iran conflict, and we needed
But now,
tons of people.
Let's kind of set the table a little bit, because starting with Vietnam is a good place to. It's a very good place to start, because the Vietnam War. I was alive then, and I was actually in my 20s, around 20th, and the Vietnam War started with in the Kennedy. When Kennedy was president, he kind of got us involved there, and then when he was assassinated, Johnson took over as president and got us deeper involved. And I'm gonna go back to the Korean War just for a second, because it relates to this. We had troops stationed in Korea after World War II, and they were attacked by the North Koreans, and I believe the Chinese were involved in helping the North Koreans, and we were the Americans and the South Koreans then repelled that attack. And we pushed the adversaries back above the 38th parallel. Now, Korea, when you look at it on a map, is a peninsula.
Yes.
And so when we pushed them back above the 38th parallel across the entire peninsula, we could essentially fortify that position. And we ended up with an armistice. The Korean War has never formally had a treaty ending the war, and so it is still from a
kind of like a Cold War.
It is, yes, well said. So there's a no man's land between the South Korean border and the North Korean border. There's no man's land. I think it's a few hundred yards wide. It may be a little wider than that. But the reason that war was successful in the sense of being able to end it at a stalemate, that being defined as success for that war, was to me it was the geography of the peninsula. Now, if you fast forward now to the Vietnam War, Vietnam is not a peninsula. Vietnam is a country that's kind of long from north to south, but it is bordered by Cambodia, and so you couldn't. Your strategy in Vietnam could not be the same strategy. Yeah. But our goal was the same, and this is what's very important. The goal in Vietnam was to try to save South Vietnam from North Vietnam. But there wasn't any strategy on how to win the war. We were always trying to get the North Vietnamese to agree to a treaty, agree to a stalemate that like Korea, but we never succeeded. Yeah. And so our adversaries, some of our other larger adversaries, were helping North Vietnam, and it was a jungle war. It was a terrible war. Most of the people who fought in Vietnam, I was in college at the time, and I got a high draft number. Now, the year that I graduated, had I gotten a low draft number, then I would have enlisted and may or may not have ended up in Vietnam, but I would have been drafted. Yeah, I had a high draft number, so I avoided the draft.
That's nice.
Yeah, and so that's my situation. Yeah, but the Vietnam War was never a particularly popular war, and when I say that, I mean it was never a particularly popular war. The Korean War, on the other hand, was considered to be a necessary war, and it was short enough so that it never got to where the Vietnam War didn't seem to ever have an end. Yeah, and it seemed to keep getting worse. Yeah, and the casualties kept getting higher. Yeah, and so it became seen as futile. And so now if you're getting drafted and having to go into a war that you consider to be futile, that has no goal, that's where the political problems came for both. It cost the Democrats the election in 1968, and then it forced Nixon to accept a treaty that collapsed within 30 days. It was a very short period of time, and so then what we should view the tragedy of the Vietnam War is we ought to have learned lessons from it.
Yeah.
We ought to have.
Yes.
And so,
Exactly.
but by the time we got into the next war, the draft had ended.
Yes.
And so you enlisted.
Mhm.
And so here's, I guess I'm going to have some questions for you, because if you implement a draft, first of all, if you implement a draft where there's not a full-scale war going on, then there's not enough jobs in the military.
Yeah.
For everybody who is old enough to be drafted. So do you implement?
It's more so just when the war is going on. There would be the understanding that yes, you sign your selective service, but there's a good chance it will be used.
Okay. Now hold on. I'm just let me just, because this I'm not trying to argue with you at all here.
Yeah.
This gets into how you execute it. So for example, would you eliminate a voluntary army?
No.
Okay. So if you don't eliminate a voluntary army, and a voluntary army is of a sufficient size and
then
force,
you don't have to worry about it. Yeah. But
then you don't have a draft.
Exactly. But if, as it has been going this direction for a while, it's been getting more and more difficult to recruit because people are less and less fit by and large. People don't care about the military as much as they used to. People are generally jaded when it comes to the United States for good reason and bad reasons. And significantly harder specifically for combat arms MOSs. Finding someone who's ready, willing, and has the ability to actually execute in a combat arms MOS where you're either shooting a rifle, a machine gun, or a mortar.
But here's my question, though. The situation as it exists right now is that recruiting has been very high for the last 12 to 15 months. It was low for 24 months before that, but it's very high. The Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, says that our military recruiting is very strong, and so he sees nobody other than people who are against the war. And I'm not trying to say that you're against. I'm not. Yeah. You can speak for yourself on that, but people who are against the Iran war are the ones who are calling for a draft because they think that that'll help their. People don't want to be drafted. They don't want to be forced to do something that they don't want to do.
Yeah,
and so it's you're advocating for a draft because there's not enough troops, or because
I don't think there's enough skin in the game for Americans.
But what I'm trying to get at here is if there are enough troops who volunteer for the military,
then you wouldn't need a draft.
But then there still wouldn't be enough skin in the game.
Well, there would be more than there is now. Right now, no one thinks that we could run out of troops in the military, and they don't even think about it as a reality that they could be drafted. That is not something that people evaluate in their day-to-day. They don't believe that letting millions of people into the country who don't go through the normal processes and pay taxes and all of these things affect anything either. So there's a lot of different overlapping viewpoints where, at the end of the day, someone who's of the liberal persuasion might not really care about people going to die in a war like Ukraine, as an example, and saying, oh, well, the U.S. should get involved. It's like, well, then sign up. You go die in a trench somewhere.
Okay, well, all right. But so it
makes you reevaluate what are American interests.
Okay, but if I'm not arguing with you here.
Yeah,
I'm trying to come up this from the standpoint of how would you practically implement a draft if there are enough people who are volunteering to do whatever the commander-in-chief believes needs to be done and the Congress approves. So, for example, the Ukraine war, Biden, it started under Biden, and Biden gave a lot of weapons but no troops.
That's right, yeah.
Trump is making NATO pay. Trump is making NATO pay for the weapons. At least that's what the reports are. Yeah. And there are no American troops.
We don't need any more American troops. We don't need a draft. But the reality is that when people think about engaging in a new war, they don't think about the even possibility that it could be drafted. But if you said, hey, look, as a practice in the U.S., if we engage in a war, let's say that when we did the whole Afghanistan thing, that all of a sudden we're like, dang, we have half the number of troops we need to actually do this right. People should be expecting a draft to happen next.
Well, there is, my grandsons are in their early 20s, they had to register for the draft.
Well, that's the selective service, but I'm saying that the difference is,
register. Well,
yeah, exactly.
I mean, that
it's
is
the same thing. Yeah,
I don't think I don't think there is a draft right now, but there still is. You still have to register.
exactly. And I think that people don't understand what that is or what that means, and that people who generally support wars find it distasteful to sit and watch war footage, which I think is also bizarre. For someone to say that we should fight a war, and then for you to say, okay, well, I've got some videos from this war. Would you like to see it? And for them to act disgusted by it is a crazy, thing, right? And I see that in senators. It just is the cognitive dissonance that you need to say, let's wage a war without knowing everything about the situation first.
But so what you're saying is, because this gets into the skin of the game issue.
Yes,
is that if you wanted to make sure that Americans had, quote, skin in the game, then the way to do that would be to say every person who serves in the military is going to serve because they were drafted. And the people who want to sign up for the military, if the military is full of draftees, they can't sign up for the military because we're already full. Okay?
I don't think so. I think that if you...
I'm saying because right now, the reverse is true. Right now, we have an all-volunteer military, all-volunteer military,
Totally.
and we have younger people who have signed up for selective service who do not expect to be drafted.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they don't expect to be drafted, and as long as our wars are small enough,
this is the biggest difference. Is that my biggest difference here is that how much would substantively change right now? Nothing with what I'm saying. Not with substantive change. It's a conversational and a educational thing where all of a sudden in every public school in America, there is a new class that you take starting 9th grade, and 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade. It's a version of like ROTC with the intent of there's a chance you might be drafted, right? Putting it more in people's heads. It'd be like the same idea as, if every single school, public school, had to have every quarter someone who lost their legs drunk driving or something come and give a speech, right? It just gets it more top of mind for people. And I think that, you should never push someone away who's trying to volunteer to join the military, for sure.
Okay.
But you get an opportunity to raise standards once you have a little bit more of an understanding and a little bit more of a ability to scope what could potentially happening with any kind of military direction.
But it sounds like your main objective, and I think this is not. I'm not saying it's a bad objective at all.
Yeah.
Your main objective is that if people think that they might be sent to war, that they will be more interested in supporting politicians who are not trigger happy. Let's put it that way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
100%. Well, it'll actually mean something to them when someone says, well, we just need to invade that country. They'll say, wait, I'm a little bit more acquainted now. It's not just video games and movies to me. I've seen videos. Don't
you think from that perspective, just that perspective that you're talking about, don't you think that's kind of where we are right now because the Iraq and Afghanistan wars were considered, quote, endless wars?
Yeah.
And certainly in the case of the Afghanistan war, where if you say what were the goals and did we achieve them, the answer is we had no goals and
we didn't
achieve anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Now I'm going to make a different argument here. I'm interested in kind of what you think, that if our goal in Afghanistan to begin with, assuming that the 9/11 was in part was supported by the Taliban. I'm making that assumption here because that's the first place we went to attack is Afghanistan, correct? After 9/11, within days we were in Afghanistan.
Yes.
Okay, and we were after the Taliban.
Yes,
and we went in there and we killed a bunch of Taliban.
Yep.
And if we had, what do you think would have been the effect if our goal was to go in and kill thousands of Taliban, and which we did, and then pull out and say, and if you do it again, we're going to kill 100,000. And so, in other words, the goal was pure retribution, and not trying to
Nation
change
building.
not to change the Afghan nation into being an ally.
That's right.
What do you think that of that as a do you think that would have been from a military standpoint?
Yeah.
And from a
preferred.
standpoint of having an impact on somebody who might do it again?
Yeah.
Do you think that would have been sufficient?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I think that what we did do, and being there such a long time, I don't think the Taliban that now runs Afghanistan, I don't think they have any interest in attack, even though their ideology is very anti-West.
Yeah.
I don't think they have any interest in attacking America again.
Well, I think that we created a lot more sympathizers than we would the other way, and it would still be just as much of a deterrent.
Okay.
I think that it was I think we created, 20 years there, we've got, whole generations of people that will never, ever want anything but the worst for America because their dad got accidentally killed by collateral damage in some kind of operation.
In Afghanistan.
In Afghanistan, yeah.
Okay.
And then same thing with Iraq, or, there's a lot of these different things where I think that the main problem I have is that you've got a bunch of people in a room who have 40, 50 years of experience wearing medals, all the strategy, all the analysts in the world, all this different stuff, and yet you will still come to a conclusion that I can't imagine would not be able to happen if you had a few people and a few hours to think about it. That's what a lot of the things that happened in the Iraq-Afghanistan engagement were just purely for the lack of asking the right questions, whether or not they understood the actual religious mix.
Was it not
Sunni
asking the right
Shiite
questions, or was it having an objective that was not achievable?
It was having an objective that was intentionally unachievable.
Well, no, I'm going to push back on that.
Mm-hmm.
The intentional part.
Yeah. It's so incompetent, I can't imagine it being anything but intentional.
Well, government can be pretty incompetent.
Especially when there are incentives. I mean, you look at Dick Cheney's background.
No, I'm going to separate it. Let me just go down this road just for a second. Because George W. Bush made a statement that I believe is fundamentally incorrect. Okay, I believe he believed it, but I still believe it's incorrect. And that is that he made the statement that within every human being is a desire to be free.
Mm-hmm.
He made that statement, and that was what he wanted to do. Was he wanted to make the Iraqi people free by his definition of what it is to be free.
Yeah,
and that is our form of democratically elected government and all of the associated freedoms and baggage that may come with it. However you want to describe it, that's what he wanted to do. Now, I'm separating Cheney from this.
Yeah,
I'm focusing on this one thing, and that is that if your objective is to do something that turns out to be impractical, meaning that it can't be done, then the effort to do it is going to fail.
Yes,
and I don't know. I don't know that if somebody asked me, well, what is the situation in Iraq right now? I couldn't answer that. So,
could I?
Okay. Do you even know whether or not they have an elected government?
Let's find out.
Okay.
I
think they still have some form of government that's elected. I can't tell you who the president of Iraq is. I don't even know if Iraq has a president. I know the Taliban doesn't have a president. I know the Taliban in Afghanistan doesn't hold elections.
This is interesting. It says, Iraq has an elected government functioning as a federal parliamentary democracy. However, political analysts often classify it as an electoral autocracy.
Okay.
Because while regular competitive elections take place, democratic government is routinely hindered by deep factionalism, corruption, and the heavy influence of heavily armed militias.
Okay, all right. So Iraq is a country that I'm not going to say it's a failed state because it wouldn't fall into that category. Somalia is a failed state.
Libya for a time.
Libya for a time, and may still be right now. But I wouldn't call Iraq a failed state. But it certainly isn't what George W. Bush envisioned.
Yeah.
So let's put it that way. I don't believe that could ever have been achieved for the very reasons that talked about. The factionalism and all of these different things that affect Middle Eastern countries in particular.
That's right.
And they don't lend themselves to the democratic process.
That's right.
That's not their culture.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we think about the Iran war, Donald Trump, at least as far as I can tell, has made it very clear he's not into nation building, in the sense that he's not looking to try to turn Iran into a democracy. If the regime that exists there today falls, he's not unhappy about that, but he's also not unhappy if the regime exists as long as he gets the four things that he says he wants. And so he started the campaign of dropping bombs on Iran when he announced that he believed that Iran was very close to having the ability to build a nuclear weapon, and he said I'm not going to allow that to happen.
Yeah.
So he did the bombings back in January, and then he did the recent bombings where he's taking down the leadership of the government and destroying their ability to produce weapons, destroying lots of the weapons they have, sinking their ships, and all these other things that we already know about.
Yeah.
So, and he says he wants four things. He wants to eliminate the possibility that they can produce nuclear weapons, meaning he wants the dust and all of the equipment. He wants them to quit supporting terrorist organizations outside of their own country. He wants them to not build offensive missiles. And what is the fourth thing? Strait of Hormuz must be open and free for passage, which is what it has been historically.
Yes.
So if he gets those four things, how do you think the public will react to that? Well, let me change that. If he gets those four things, how do you react to that?
That'd be great.
Okay, so you'd be happy. You think it would be? You think what we did will be worth it?
For all intents and purposes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not trying to put you on the spot here. I believe it would be worth it because I do believe I believe there's
it puts us in an advantageous position.
Somebody can argue, well, Iran wasn't that close to having a nuclear weapon, and I could not refute that with facts.
Yeah, and they couldn't either.
And yeah, exactly. Yeah. But what I know for a fact is that Iran has been supporting the Houthis, the Hezbollah. They support terrorists. They support terrorists in Iraq who kill American soldiers.
Yeah,
they support that.
Yeah,
and so they are a nation that is essentially at war with everybody in the Middle East, trying to become the power that controls the entire Middle East.
Yeah,
and so if we think that it's in our interest for them to not be in that position and to stop doing that, and that the cost of forcing them to quote behave.
Yeah.
If we think the cost is worth it, then I support that. I came to believe fairly quickly after the war in Iraq and the war in Afghanistan that this was futile.
Yes.
But I wasn't there initially.
Yeah.
So I've learned from that. I've said in Iran whether or not you can cause the demise of the regime. That's an open question. I do not know the answer to that.
Yeah.
But I am confident that if we continue to strangle their economy, I believe that they are a weaker country and they can do less damage. I think what Israel is doing right now in Hezbollah is helping to put pressure on Iran to come to some kind of terms. And I think that Trump trying to get all of the Middle Eastern countries to sign on to the Abraham Accords signals puts Iran on an island politically and economically, and so those are just kind of my thoughts, and we'll just kind of see. But what you're saying is your interest in a draft almost sounds to me like you want there to be more thought, more political thought to going into a war because sons and daughters who don't think they're going to go to war have a risk of being drafted to go to war, and that would cause politicians to pause or to think more carefully.
Yes,
and I think that's a good thing. I mean, I think that I
I
think
feel like that can't hurt anything.
Yeah.
For people to be extra cautious about something so big.
so big. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So it's like, but you can't, but to not let to be like, oh, sorry, you can't join because we have to get this other person over here who's not emotionally bought in to join. I definitely don't believe that. We definitely need to, keep, and if we have our numbers up, great. That's awesome. But I think that if every time we started a war, then all of a sudden every publicly funded school had to institute a class, even if you just did it for this time. But let's say we start this war with Iran, and now in every single class in America, in every public school, there is a class that has to be taught once a week where they talk to the kids about war. And they say, okay, we are now in a conflict with Iran. This is what it looks like to be drafted. This is the stuff you'll want to have prepared. You probably want to start running once a week. Like this, people would consider it fear mongering, but I think it's reality mongering at this point because everyone's so insulated. I mean, the amount of people who didn't know we were in war
Now,
for the past 10 years.
Let me offer a different way of approaching, hopefully to get to the same result, because I don't think your result is to get our high school kids physically fit. You're trying to act as a deterrent to go to war.
I want people to I want people to have
maybe what we need is just better history teaching.
Well, people don't listen to that. There's no fear in history.
Okay, all right. Okay,
that's the main reason.
Okay,
because I would agree. But even if you had the best history teaching, there's nothing you're afraid of. If you learned something about the French Revolution, can you tie it to today? Like oftentimes we do.
Let me say
and
this.
there is something
I
to be
have spent
afraid
a lot
of.
of time. I have spent a lot of time studying the French Revolution.
Yeah.
And so, for that particular example, not from a standpoint from a what I've learned
Like principles
about how politics can work when mobs take over, that scares me a lot.
100%.
Okay, and I'm very concerned about. I am actually very concerned about that today. That we're moving in a directory of mobocracy, not democracy.
Yes.
And also, and I will also say this: in studying the French Revolution and studying the American Revolution and the aftermath of the American Revolution and how we came to form our government, we're getting off point here just a little bit, but not that far, because we're talking about whether or not history can be a teacher on anything.
Yes.
I believe that. If you read, there's a book called Citizen.
Yes.
It's on the French Revolution. It's 1,000 pages, and it's like a journalist is writing about this. And I mean, we're talking over 40,000 people were guillotined. I mean, where their trial was at 10 in the morning, they were guillotined at 2 in the afternoon. And then what happened to people who spoke out, who were part of the so-called revolution? Because there were different factions who opposed the status quo, and the most violent faction opposing the status quo in France was called the Jacobins. They were the most violent, but even within the Jacobins, there were some who were more violent than other Jacobins, and it got so bad. That the Jacobins who were less violent, who said, wait a minute, we're killing too many people, they were themselves killed.
Right? Funny how that works.
They were themselves killed. Robespierre was the leader of the Jacobins. He gave a speech to almost all of Paris. I mean, it was a huge speech. Within 60 days, he was guillotined. And so mobs can do terrible things in the name of whatever good.
Exactly.
Because once it gets to a point, the most violent in the mobs are the ones who control the mobs.
That's exactly right.
So studying history and reading it the way that this author described it, heads in a basket, heads falling in a basket, heads being held up to the crowd cheering.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's written well, it will give you pause.
That's true.
And I believe that you can see war movies that I will tell you one of the most compelling war movies I've seen is All Quiet on the Western Front.
That one's amazing.
Wasn't that a wonderful movie?
So well done.
Yeah. And so what I'm asking you is I think those types of, I think if you incorporate a level of entertainment that's also and when I say entertainment, I don't mean entertaining.
Totally. Yeah, exactly. But just engaging.
I mean engaging. I think that Band of Brothers.
Yeah, that's an incredible.
It's an incredible series, and it shows what war is in a terrible way.
Yes.
So I think that there are ways to accomplish what you want, and I don't disagree with what you're wanting. I want our politicians to think very, very hard and have very, very good reasons before taking military action against anybody.
Yes.
But I don't want them to feel like they can't. And so I think there are ways to accomplish your goal educationally. I also think that as a physical fitness matter, that's a separate matter. That's a MAHA, Make America Healthy Again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I agree. We have I don't know if you've seen Mike Tyson ever interviewed about how heavy he was when he was a kid.
Yes,
and what he ate as a kid.
Yeah,
he was over 300 pounds.
That's wild.
He was 5'9".
Yeah, I was about to say he's not very tall.
He's not
very tall.
Yeah,
big frame, but still that much weight. You're massive.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's talked about what he ate. It's really fascinating to listen to him talk about what he eats now.
That's right.
And what he sees other kids eating now and how terrible that is. And so, so I think there's ways, and then we could also have a separate conversation, which we won't do today, on what does it take in terms of reform to have the schools teach what we want, because I don't believe you're ever going to get the schools run by the government to do anything
not great.
The way that the way it needs to be done.
Yes.
And but I do really like what you're talking about. I don't agree of exactly the way that you want to approach it, but I agree completely with the goal.
Yeah.
Of making sure that our younger people have a sense of what war is.
Yeah.
And why war should be avoided if it can.
Yeah. I don't see any problem showing 9th graders in high school combat footage.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have no problem with that.
Maybe 14-year-olds.
Is that how old 9th grader is?
No, 9th grade is
19. 9th grade is 16-year-old.
No. An 18-year-old is a senior.
9th grader. I was thinking 16. Oh, 14 to 15.
Yeah.
So let's just say
16
grade.
Juniors.
Yeah, there you go.
Juniors and seniors.
Yeah,
that's okay. We're 100%. I'm with you. Juniors and seniors.
I was thinking 9th grade was 16. But yeah,
juniors and seniors. I think it's great, but I think it can also be where you play the movie and then you talk about it.
Exactly.
Because I think that's another one. Another movie to watch that is absolutely frightening is War Horse.
Yes, that was a great one. I saw
wonderful
that in
movie, but it shows you just the futility.
Yeah, fighting for years for inches.
Yeah. So at any rate, listen. I don't want to beat the horse to death or whatever. But I think it's been an interesting discussion.
Absolutely.
And I appreciate your perspective on it, because you come from a person who has been in combat, and I'm a person who has not. And so we've covered a lot of stuff. We try to cover the latest things on what we see leading up to the election. We've covered the trends that seem to be continuing in place and what the voters will decide on. And I appreciate your perspective.
Appreciate you.
Yeah. Thanks, Russ.